of plans, what to do in the event of the security situation becoming worse. There are still some problems with the ISPS code, inevitably, drawn to people's attention. Its scope is one of them. As I said, ship security, port facility security is what it covers, but there's now more interest in supply chain security in general, i.e. from the shipper all the way through to the receiver. That's very much an interest internationally, but the ISPS code doesn't go that far. There's sometimes still confusion about the Declaration of Security, the DOS, but we'll touch on that a bit later. And of course what the boundaries of a port facility are, that can sometimes cause a problem. The good practices that are available around the world on drills and exercises, I think, are becoming more familiar, more well known, which is helpful because best industry practice is being circulated between ports. And of course the last one, risk management methodologies. There are lots of them, including cost-benefit analyses and others, and these issues are still ones that come up on how to assess the risk. But to help matters along, there's an IMO guide to maritime security in the ISPS code. What it does is puts together lots of guidance we've got already. We had it in advance, going all the way back to the Achille Lauro in 1985. It provides guidance to member states on the legal framework that may be necessary, and it also outlines the administrative and process requirements, as well as the technical and human element training ones too. Its target audience is those that are most affected: government officials who have responsibilities under the code, port facility employees, and of course shipping companies and their crews and companies ashore. The code is structured in that way, which just confirms what I said about who it's actually addressed. I mentioned the Declaration of Security. It's a bit of an anomaly, this. Contracting governments determine when the Declaration of Security should be, what it should be. So it's not the task of the port facility, whether private or state-owned. So it's a slightly strange situation it can be in some parts of the world where the private port facility is told what the Declaration of Security would be by the government. That's one of those issues that is still a problem. A Declaration of Security should never be the norm, and should normally be required when both port and ship are operating at the basic security level 1. If a port facility requests the ship to agree to a different Declaration of Security, then of course the ship must comply. To find out about information on port facility security in other parts of the world, IMO has got a very helpful database as part of its Global Integrated Shipping Information System, ISIS. And approved port facilities are all listed. You can search on the database. The information is submitted by member governments themselves. So if it's not accurate, it's because a member government hasn't provided the information or hasn't updated it. And the details are quite detailed. Obviously it's too small to see, but there's quite a lot of information available on them. Going on to training, I quite like this little quote that one of my colleagues found about an incident in Cameroon. So while the shore security watchmen on board a tanker were taking a break, armed robbers boarded the vessel, took hostage the deck cadet and stole the ship's property. So it's not quite the idea that security watchmen just take a break and knock off. I mean, that's, so obviously their training was perhaps not as good as it might have been. And there is a load of information provided by IMO on this. It's got a very complicated number, Circular 1188, but it's guidelines on training and certification of port facility security officers. And that's a useful bit of information, but there's even better information, I think, now. in MSC Circular 1341, that it was developed by IMO to consolidate a lot of information that is all relevant. There's sections of the ISPS code it refers to, the ILO, the Labour Organization, IMO Code of Practice on Security Imports, and some elements related to the IMDG code, the Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. So those elements relating to security and training have been all put together under this circular, which is a useful one. Also, perhaps worthy of note is that guidelines on security training apply to people with and without security duties specifically. So the idea is to familiarise everyone excuse me, who works in a port with the requirements of security, because the more eyes there are with a thinking security, the better the situation is. And just as an example, the code includes this, it's probably too small to see, but a competency table related to those without designated security duties in the port. And it's quite practical. You can demonstrate your competence under the code by having evidence of service in a port for a certain amount of time, or you've taken some approved tests, or you've successfully completed some training. So there's various ways of meeting the standard. And there's a useful manual on drills and exercises which can complement that activity. I said I'd talk a little bit about the wider context. And port and ship security, of course, covers or could address many issues, from terrorism to piracy to robbery, as you wish. All these are arguably responsibilities of a port state and or a flag state or coastal state. And perhaps I just list some of them: maritime and offshore security in general, suppressing piracy and armed robbery, protecting fishing, countering illegal trafficking, protecting the environment. These state maritime security, safety responsibilities are often found in a Coast Guard, for example, or Coast Guard and Navy. But they're all important related to security in general. And as we are talking about Nigeria, or the Nigerian College, of course, I thought I would mention piracy and armed robbery off West Africa. I know you're going to hear a bit more about that later. But it's rather different from what we were expecting and suffering of Somalia and the east coast of Africa. It's more to do with theft and trading vessels not passing ones, and it is in territorial waters. And I stress the territorial waters because we at IMO recently did a lot of work with Nigeria and many of its neighbours to develop a code of conduct. You may know there's a code of conduct relating to the East African countries. There's now one relating to the West African countries, which was recently adopted in Benin and signed by 22 heads of state in June this year. And this is concerning the repression of piracy, armed robbery against ships and illicit maritime activity in West and Central Africa. And over the last 10 years, these are IMO statistics, and then you can find different statistics because this is just what's reported to IMO. Other reports to other people, you have different numbers, but I only show them just to indicate that over 10 years there were 44 seafarers killed. According to our numbers, there may have been more. And about 70% of the activities are in territorial waters in port areas. So arguably the ISPS code, which covers port areas, port facilities, and the responsibilities of a port state for activities in its own waters are very pertinent. So it's an issue for consideration. And that's why the code of conduct, hopefully, with a bit of luck, will have some expected output. Safer and secure seas, which of course help to boost international and intra-African trade. And more importantly, particularly on the east coast of Africa, but more so on the west now, sustainable development of the maritime sector, which arguably could be a key driver for development in Africa in general. And how, what are we doing? Well, we're working with the relevant UN organisations in the region, United Nations Organisation of West Africa, etc. And we've also recently championed, promoted the maritime sector for Africa at a recent Tokyo conference on African development, which is a big one with quite a lot of money attached if the situation goes well. And of course we're tied into the maritime development in the UN's own post-2015 development agenda. So I think those are positive developments after the rather negative numbers about incidents, all the rest of it. But I've rushed through this rather to try and help me get back on track. So I say thank you for listening, and I guess we'll answer questions after.
As some of you have, before we move to the next speakers, we're going to allow 5 or 10 minutes for a few questions if anybody from the floor has got any questions that they'd like to ask. I was concerned. Yes, we've got a question. Please keep your questions short, but do tell us who you are and who you work for.
My name is Edubio Kini, an alumni. I hold Chief Engineer's Certificate of Competency Class 1 from Singapore Maritime Authority. Just to digress a little bit, I'm here also to let you know that in 1993, when the administration decided to start taking female into the academy, here we have 2 ladies. They were batch 1 of that set. One of them is my wife, Henrietta, and Ekaite. But my question directly is to the academy. And the big question is, does the academy really need help? I ask that because if you look at the intake the academy takes in my time, the total number of cadets were maximum 150. But today, we get to enroll upwards of 2,000 each year, knowing very well that we cannot even have 100 of them progressing into having vessels to carry on their career. So what is the academy or the governing board or the ministry doing? Because I don't see any reason why we have to take 3,000 when we know we don't even have 50 moving up to the next level. We just accumulate people. Next, I will just put all of them together. What are we doing about the lecturers in the academy? We have lecturers that have not gone on board a vessel in the last 20 years, and we still have them lecturing, not for refresher courses. What are we doing about that? In my time, somebody will tell you a ship can only move from 38 degrees port to 38 degrees starboard. But today, we have the azimuth. We have vessels that can move 70 degrees port to starboard. I'll say that because, fortunately, the director of the academy is here, and Happy is here. I've written to him twice, and fortunately or unfortunately, he hasn't responded to him. We have plans for the academy. We need to access the academy. When I left the academy, I wasn't as educated as I am today. I consult for mobile 10 years going. And when I was doing my chiefs, I made a vow to myself that if I should come to this level, I should be able to exchange ideas to assist the academy. Apart from being an alumni, I'm a major stakeholder. I come from Oron Alumni. And 3 years ago, when the alumni in Akwa Ibom met, we said we don't really need to just make noise on how to assist the academy. Let's move in and see how we can lecture. And it was based on that, people like me decided to give lectures free of charge. I drive from Beckett every now and then to Beckett in the last 3 years. But I stopped a few months ago. Why? Because we still have lecturers in the academy that make money out of the cadets. What is the academy doing about that? We see lecturers who give out assignments, and cadets are meant to return those assignments with money. What is the academy doing about that? We are in the process of developing this cadets. I expect that better instructions, better management of the cadets will be carried out so that the manpower development will be well harnessed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for all the questions and the passion for the alma mater. First of all, let me start with the admission policy. I was sent to the academy to oversee the admission arising from the exit of the Union Pass Rector, Mr. Fayetteville. The mandate with me was to ensure that I clean up the academy and they position it on the point of growth to attend the required expectation of the Nigerian people. What are the expectations? The ensuring that my child was going in the academy and it tells him to go and do manual labor because he's not exposed to the real profession. Certain things happened in the past that made the academy to be floating to the extent that it became a laughing stock because facilities were not made available. 22 years of its establishment, he had no senator. We came in and within 3 months, we brought in the first senator. Now we have 3. What transpired for those that are now very prominent in the international circle is because at the time, 1979, when the then President, Roberto Joe, brought in the Nigerian line, most of them benefited from there. With the members of the shipping line, when it got valuable, or when it got scrapped, the problem of the academy started. You cannot establish an academy without having a complement of what should sustain the career prospect of those students. Precisely, that was why the President last year organized a Maritime Secondary Summit, one of which high point was to develop local content. The issue of the traineeship was articulated, the issue of seat time was articulated, and the issue of crafting a policy that will ensure that those that are carrying our cargo, whether dry or wet cargo, contribute to the development of these cadets. Nigeria is a nation of about 150 persons. The goal of Guinea is large enough. If you limit the intake of cadets to 150, as it was those days, the challenges in the 90s are different from the challenges of today. The requirement that we need to help us, even that the competence regime, much less to drive, to contribute to protecting our maritime domain in the Gulf of Guinea, is that we should be able to be producing a minimum of 5,000 cadets every year as seafarers and engineers. That is a tough order, but we have to start from somewhere. The political situation in the country requires that now that everybody has seen that industry as a lucrative venture, policies are made to ensure that cadets and mission will migrate from the template of 500 cadets per year to at least 1,500 cadets in the recent time. Management decided this year that we are not going beyond 700 cadets to have control, because even the National Board for Technical Education, there has been accreditation to medical science and mathematics students, and insisted that there cannot be more than 30 in the class. We have more than 30. We have about 40 or 50 in the class. The situation therefore means government has to now establish a policy, because it is its own baby. That policy is to increase the budgetary funding in this budget cycle. Rather than give us an envelope that caters for 500 cadets, as was done in the 90s, I have told the President and the Minister of Transport and the relevant stakeholders that government should increase the template to cover 200 cadets that are averagely taken per year. And when that is done, what we need to do is to increase facilities that will take care of all of them. Now, the simulators that we have can only handle not all of them, a part of them. As I said, we need to get more assistance. Assistance from well-wishers, assistance from friendly countries, assistance from donor countries, because, as I said, today you are serving the interests of the world economy. You are not in Nigeria. You are serving Mobil, you are serving Shell, the oil and gas industry. They are better for it. But their root is from Nigeria. Oron, you cannot forget your root. You cannot speak on your root. What's important is, let us try and see how we can clearly answer that question. Does the academy really need help? Of course we need help. And that's why this assembly. If we don't need help, there will be no need for this convention, this something. We need help because we have to tell you the blatant truth. That look, we need help. Otherwise, they will not have done it alone. Talk about the issue of the cadets being, or let's start with lecturers. The Penal Character Commission granted me a grace to recruit 50 new lecturers. Most of them mariners, most of them chief engineers. We've just completed their exercise. 2 weeks ago, I gave them an induction course. The topic of that induction course was join me in the